Mitzi!
Good morning.
How are you, my friend? You're looking lovely, resplendent. You're in the office.
I'm in the office. I'm actually going out after this to take photographs of somebody's house and get it on the market before Christmas.
You're a machine! Can I say from the rest of the country, thank you for paying off the national debt?
Someone's got to do it, and it's growing by the day.
Key worker.
Mr. Whale, it's been
Hello.
a long time.
It has. You were you were a bit poorly, weren't you? And then, of course, I've gone missing. So, yes, we're reunited in just the week before Christmas. Everyone's favourite Christmas gift.
It was the night before Christmas. Stephen Brown and Luke Sinclair this morning. I saw you stalking that show.
Yep, trying to drag down standards wherever I go.
It is immensely useful, though, isn't it? It's very sort of practical and utilitarian.
Yeah, shows us what to avoid. No, of course it is. Those guys are lovely. What I particularly loved about this morning's meeting was the way they bumped Overman off the show in 2.6 seconds. Hi guys, here I am. No, you're not. No, you're not, Andy.
That's all we've got time for from Andy Overman. Good night.
Yeah, he is. You've been dumped, Andy. You've been dumped.
But no, you know what? You talk about machines, but that Luke Sinclair, he is a machine.
Yes, he is.
He's the Terminator. He's on autopilot. He's automated everything.
Yeah. Do you know what I like about Luke? There's many things I like about Luke, but one of the things I like about Luke is when I first saw him, I think when he was going over to his first AREC. He wasn't the first Brit who had gone over to AREC, but he is certainly, as far as I'm concerned, the Brit who has literally had an epiphany at looking at their marketplace there and had the balls, the gumption, the drive to actually change his business and change it dramatically for the better, borrowing, not just copying, but using and translating what the Aussies do best into the UK marketplace. And I think there's a lot of people get pissed off with all these Aussies coming over here and obviously talking. I mean, I would point out that's obviously not my view. I love them to death, but a lot of them feel like they're being lectured to. But Luke actually does it, and he's made those changes himself. So hats off, early morning cup of tea to him.
Yep, a lot of kudos to him and to Stephen Brown for being so open this morning and sharing his what's going on in his life and the fact that he's keeping on going. That is. On that note, we'll wish you all a great Christmas and we'll see you.
You're really good, aren't you, like that, David? Keep it going. Yeah, Stephen's open. What do they call? No, I was going to say accessible, vulnerable. But that's
but he is. You know what? That it's not his shtick because he's not putting it on. But Stephen is what you see is what you get. He is he's a true gent, sort of in real life and also, off air as well. I've not yet met anybody with a bad word to say about him.
Oh, come on, WhatsApp group. No, only joking. Right, Lindsay, let's just think about this because obviously Christmas is, and as usual, I'm sure you know that I obviously won't have prepared for this. If you could have one guest as a Christmas present for 2021 on the show, who would it be from the world of estate? Actually, we'll do two. One from the world of estate agency and one from the wider world, which I believe exists.
Gosh. Can we go for wider world first? It's going to be easier.
Of course you can. Keep it clean. Melania. Let's get Melania on.
I'd actually, you know what? I'd actually like to talk to Ivanka. Is that her name?
Yeah, I'm sure you would. Yes, it is.
Yes.
You can say it that way.
I'd like to get her on the show because I actually believe somewhere that she must be an intelligent human being somewhere, despite her genetic makeup. She's got to have some sensibilities of what's going on.
Against all that genetic baggage, she's fought through.
Yeah, I think so. Actually, who I heard Tom McGee on another podcast last but I was reminded of what a good guest he was. But but I would actually like to speak to the guy that Sam Hunter does his podcast with. Is that Mark Worrell?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, I think I'd probably like to talk to Mark because get the other side of that camera with him. I think we can arrange that. It's low key, low budget.
You're shit at this present game, aren't you? I'd be ordering the
equivalent. You know what you
but...
did to me in 2020. You gave me the gift that I never thought I was going to get, which was I got this year on our podcast. We've had Matty Hayson, who you absolutely adore.
I do. A pools of blue eyes that you could just fall into. Absolutely.
Okay. So that, your man love for him is justified and acknowledged.
And business respect.
100%. We've had Josh Fegan. We've had Tom Panos. We've had Peter Clark. I mean, we've had some real heavy hitters.
Yeah, and that's when we can be doing it.
And so when you no, but when you turn around to me and you say, who would you have from the world of estate agency? Genuinely, we've spoken to pretty much anyone who's anyone this year.
Well, you just let me know. I will go and get you them. Like a podcast Baldrick, I will have a cunning plan. I think the one we haven't got on, who is it? Is it Bob Wolf? Isn't he? He's the one you quite respect.
Do you know what? He doesn't respond to any of my emails. Good morning, Bob, if you're not watching.
No, it's the Amy show this morning. We got Amy Hansen. We've got Amy Shields. We're basically our podcast. Sorry, our Facebook advertising is clearly targeting the female demographic of A's at the moment. So well done, party.
Can we wish a really speedy recovery to our Kerfuffle sponsored international athlete Amy Hansen, who was she's not quite broken her toe, but she took a.
I didn't hear this.
You didn't hear this? She's got a foot in a massive thingy. You obviously don't read the messages on Facebook or the group.
Oh no, I didn't see that. So does that mean now I can get my sponsored helmet back? And that sounds really wrong.
She's going to be out of action just long enough, but she's going to be back in the game by the time the first game starts next year. So we wish her all the best.
I look forward to the annual request for sponsorship at that stage. Then
we're having a whip round anyway, just to buy her something while she's recuperating. You didn't respond to any of the messages, so your end of the bargain is about 10K, if that's all right.
That's fine. That's absolutely cool. I'm sure the money well invested. It will certainly go down better than my Countrywide shares.
Ooh, well, on that interesting note, tell us what you think about that.
So, what was it? I just saw actually here. What was it? Estate agency group LSL has posted its best sales figures in a decade, despite the impact of COVID-19. In a trading update for the 10-month period to the 31st of October, the group revealed its sales exchange pipeline was more than 50% up on a year earlier. And I take the fact that you've disappeared off is because you are so incredibly shocked by that. And whilst you try to figure out how to work your technology, I will continue to go on. So what I think is interesting about this is that we've been talking about, obviously, if you'd come back to the market in May or June and you'd said to you lot, obviously this is going to be the market you're going to have, you'd have laughed us out of town, wouldn't you? And Absolutely. Everyone's talking about not just meeting the targets that they reassessed and did in the middle of the year, but they're actually breaking the original targets that they had in place. Now, clearly that's absolutely exceptional, but that's against the background of the corpus having had a torrid time recently anyway, hasn't it? So I think there is a really interesting dynamic going here. Clearly the background story is Connell's increasing its bid ever more for Countrywide. And Josh Rayner threw into being the little tinker he is of Rayner Recruitment, threw into a property industry story the other day. What was it? 2's company and 3's an even bigger one. It was back at the end of November there. But he just made the point that between the three of them, they've actually got some pretty awesome departments and specialities. And I don't think it's as wide a shout as it could be. Certainly, I think Connells and Countrywide's waiting to happen. And what does that say to an independent agent? Are you bothered? Do you think that the agency needs a strong corporate kind of background?
I don't know. It's like having one of those weird girlfriends that just keeps sort of, I love you. No, I love you more. I love you, and they're increasing that offer again and again and again. In terms of this whole game of cat and mouse, we all know where it's headed. That they're going to spend the sort of money they're going to need to make it happen. Well, I'll tell you something. Independents, at least where I've been, we have always managed to fight off the larger chains quite well, because actually on a micro level, the branches or the provincial branches of these sort of monsters. So if you take a sort of a Bridgefords, or what used to be known as Bairstow Eves back in the day, the turnover of staff was immense. So you could be dealing with someone on a Monday, they wouldn't be around by a Thursday. So in terms of client continuity, going out, winning those instructions, building up a bit of a local reputation, the game has completely changed. People want local personalities, don't they?
And Tom jumps in here, and it was absolutely the point I was just about to make. You know, the industry definitely needs a strong corporate who will train all the self-employed agents. Otherwise, that is genuinely what they are known for, as much as anything, aren't they? That they have tremendous training plans and exercises in place for their teams, and you've seen multiple, obviously, independents sprout off the back of that.
I think they do in that respect. They nurture the staff at the training end of things particularly well, but at branch level, I think that the branch managers tend to be seen as sort of despots running their own little republic, and the life for the sort of neg on the face of things is not particularly great. There's a lot in there that they do. It sounds amazing. Like, for instance, I think Countrywide had on a Thursday, they had to be dialing out for. I mean, I interviewed a number of people that used to work for a corporate, and they had to dial out for a certain number of hours on a Thursday. And if you did not meet that target, you didn't get to come back for the next Thursday. And so forcing your staff into mechanical routine, that it's unlikely to lead to, to real results. It's not the sort of prospecting we talk about in terms of true nurturing. So I think the environment on a branch by branch basis has improved. I don't know, but I think the independents at the moment are ahead on that sort of culture.
Oh, they definitely are. I'll tell you what was really interesting, going back to not too long ago now, where obviously all of the PR, all of the time and attention was spent on looking at the obviously the likes of Purple Bricks and the online agents, and what was obviously still a tiny. It was always less than 5% of the market at that stage. What was being ignored at that time? The likes of the corporates were on the biggest acquisition path, in recent memory, and were grabbing and acquiring all of the many of the mid-tier agencies, leaving a real squeeze in terms of, obviously, we know that over 70% of the industry is 1 and 2 office agencies, but there's always been a really healthy sandwich bit in the middle of the sandwich, hasn't there, of those independents, 5 to 15 offices, and they were simply being scooted up, and it was hard to see with their massive, obviously, acquisition books, how that was going to change. Countrywide going up to like 1,300, 1,400 offices, and the rise was inexorable. And actually, it just shows you can't predict for anything, can you? Because, of course, tenant fee ban and everything else, that was obviously a lettings fee ban. That was obviously that wiped out the acquisitions really for the short time on the letting side, and it's never really recovered to a large degree, has it?
Do you not think also it's a little bit of arrogance on behalf of the corporates, so that they assume the value of their brand is a lot higher in terms of the currency it holds with members of the local public? So, for instance, I think you and I discussed on a show earlier this year, there was a Green Co. Where Stephen Brown used to work, Green & Co. branch that suddenly became Martin & Co., which is you want to have a look at corporates done well. Tom McGee's one of them. Zoe from Belvoire's another. Great. But if you're buying a local brand that has traded in that area for 30 or 40 years, by changing its name and its brand and its culture pretty much overnight, you've trashed whatever you've bought anyway in terms of reputation.
There's always an element, isn't there, is my understanding in there, that highlights goodwill and literally the brand value. So, I can always understand kind of longer term potentially moving towards, single branding entities. But do you remember who was it bought out? Lane Fox, and that shows Lane Fox, one of the oldest, it was Stratton Parker, wasn't it? And even those sorts of businesses for a period of time, they kept the original branding, then they had dual branding, and they migrated that over literally to allow that education.
That's sensible, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just, whether it needs, one of the things I've always found perverse is, although it must be an absolute fucking nightmare to manage the kind of 40 plus brands in Countrywide, I can see why people do know and I was going to say love, but at least respect and recognise the brand, don't they, in their local areas. For example, you mentioned a couple there, and Beresford Adams up here. If you go across to North Wales, still massive, a massive board presence over there. And I think, going back to it again, they're not the worst competitors in the world to have, are they? Because my understanding is they don't particularly drop their pants in terms of fees.
Fees were always more expensive. But you know what? You're not getting the estate agency game has changed dramatically. I would even say in the last 12 months, but over the last 2 years, if you are not local, cuddly, accessible, knowledgeable, willing to give away your time and your knowledge for free, and denizen of your community, running around doing this, that, and the other, then you're simply not the kind of estate agent people want to see. And I think I don't know whether the corporates are able to do that. I suspect they're going to do. Every now and again, you'll see some sort of a charity drive where somebody's going to sleep out in the cold for a night and all that sort of stuff. But keeping it going for 12 months is a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, and doing that accidentally happens after every
after particularly rough night out.
The odd conference every now and again. But let's just go through the bullet points he highlights. And bearing in mind, again, this is Josh Rayner's view, and just making the point what it would look like with Countrywide, Connors and LSL. So he's gone that little bit further. But he said, a new super PAC and Barnes, this would be obviously just under 2,000 offices, just to put into context. Well, at least initially anyway. Combines the best of three businesses, best management team in the industry. Connell's top team would run the lot. Well, I don't think there's any doubt on that, is there? Connell's do for years, despite having smaller networks, they've always turned out the profits. The old the main obviously point there is that they've always run a steady ship. Connells have again declared their intention to expand that way. Clearly they're going there. A resulting branch reach that would allow the combined entity to dominate nationally as no other agency has ever done. I don't know about dominate nationally, but definitely to have a genuine representation across the country. Mass brand consolidation into a handful of names, a big name on every high street rather than the current fragmented picture. 3 big budgets promoting fewer brands, a marketing director's dream. Huge leverage with premises landlords. The rents on 1,500 or so offices would suddenly be forced much cheaper, Mike Ashley style. I don't think any of us should be quoting Mike Ashley as a business thing here. But he goes on to then say FS conveyancing and survey dominance via LSL across the group, lettings and management strength across the network. Perhaps the one thing that Countrywide does very well. And he just reads through a few of those. But you can start to see at least how in the boardroom and in the city this starts to make sense, can't you?
But the scale of it is huge in terms of the numbers. And numbers is something that we wanted to talk about today. Yes. Chris Watkin. Good morning, Chris Watkins. The corporate are more concerned about centralizing and homogenizing. There you go. But we wanted to talk about numbers because you and I were having a conversation the other evening, and you were actually very lucid and very intelligent in your analysis. I said, please, for God's sake, save it for Sunday. But we were talking principally about, we started talking about booming. and the news story of the week, pretty much in terms of comments, if you like. So that was the story that Boomin has delayed the launch of its portal. And if you were to look at some of the comments on the property industry, which, as you know, is always the barometer of where all the cynics are at. But this is, I'm just going to post one of them. Oh, here we go. Here we go. If I can bring him up on screen.
Okay.
They've had nowhere near the level of take-up from agents as they expected, and going live would be a complete waste of time and money. So we're not assuming necessarily that is the case, but clearly they haven't reached what everybody in the comments section was referring to as critical mass. And you and I had a chat about what critical mass actually looks like for a supplier, because it's very interesting. And you talked about some of the leviathans that you've been involved with in terms of the numbers of branches that they've managed to bring on the books. So what does that look like? What do the biggest slices of the pie look like at estate agency level?
I think it's really important. Portals are in their own different sphere in the industry. Clearly, they need almost complete market domination to hit that critical mass in a way that the independent or smaller suppliers in the industry don't. You have suppliers out there that are synonymous with being market leaders, being massive suppliers, the likes of Fixed Flow, the likes of Repit, the likes of Spectre, Moneypennies, and all the rest of it. Where the biggest of those top out at 5,500 offices, ostensibly 20-25% of what the market might be. I don't know what the current numbers are in terms of agency. So it's really, really important to understand what success looks like to in the different areas. But when you get into the portal world, and unless the model's completely smooth for me, that phrase critical mass is absolutely critical by definition, because of course, if the consumer ultimately goes to a portal and doesn't find the right levels of stock, they're not going to be coming back very often there. So whether that critical mass is, it needs to be 60-70% of all agents on board, and that's probably where I think it is. They've got to get to that stage pretty quickly for the consumers to think it's right, and therefore to get on with that.
Hang on, 60 or 70% in numbers. Are we still? We're talking about a pie that is roughly speaking somewhere between 26,000 and 28,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, as I would average it out, 27,000. That's right. Yeah, I mean, 27,000 is what they check out there in terms of offices. There's dual offices there, sales and lettings together. But yeah, that's my understanding in terms of where it is. Certainly above 20,000 anyway. So, Rightmove famously, and I think they made I don't know if it was them who made an announcement. Some studies have shown that they've become below 90% of the marketplace. But the one thing, obviously, the consumer absolutely loves them is, in their minds at least, you go to Rightmove and you're going to find the stock on there, with a few exceptions.
So Rightmove's numbers last time we looked at it, I think they were hovering somewhere around 16,000 branches altogether.
I don't. Is it that, or was that subscribers? Because they do obviously have a lot of land and new homes and things like that.
Yeah. So let's just assume the number is 16,000, and how that's broken down, we don't know. But I think Boomin's are way off that at the moment. We were talking on Friday that 4,000 or 5,000 actually is a hell of a lot to get to, isn't it?
Yes, look, it's what you aspire to get to. If you were a normal business there, as I said, any of the CRM providers, pretty much any other part of it, you get to that stage and you feel like you've arrived in terms of there, and anything beyond that is genuinely starting to then head towards. That's why they talk about it, right move levels of obviously influence and everything else there. But this is the difficulty. This is why every week when I was at my previous place, I used to take a call from a portal who said they were going to be a right move killer or a ZPG killer there and everything else, and they, even more rarely they would then say, "Oh, we've got loads of funds to do it," and you never heard of these companies after the initial launch again, did you? Because it is so difficult because a lot of the likes of Rightmove and everything else didn't start overnight, did they? They didn't hit those numbers, and so to enter the field late, as it were, there is an amazing challenge.
And to assume you're going to be able to make up for, I don't know what, 12, 15 years of Rightmove building that portion of their clientele,
Simply
and building that and nurturing that dependence. You can't do that. You can't go from 0 to 60 in one go. And there's one thing having the money to attract the members of the public, so they're going to have massive advertising campaigns to try and get that booming message out there. That's one thing. But you need the agents and you need the stock in order to give the public what they need, because the last thing you want is for them to arrive at booming, not find anything in their area, and then decide it's back to Rightmove.
Yeah, and what I think is really interesting is obviously they have. I actually see it. I don't see it as a negative. I actually think that from their point of view, they would be very pleased with the amount of and the named brands that they have got on board, because obviously there is that purple the purple link from obviously previous things that I thought would could potentially delay others there. But they've had good uptake in that area, and of course, once they start getting the investor money in to drive advertising, that will drive recognition and leads, of course, and so it will become self-fulfilling to a large point of view. But what the challenge I see is how long can it stick at those lower levels until they've really got to start making it work, and does that kind of anti-purple bricks antipathy that was there before mean that there is going to be a demographic of agents that simply won't be convinced? That's the Michael Jackson popcorn eating gift that I'm in at the moment.
Well, they're playing it extremely well at the moment, and the way that they're playing it is that they are obviously the precursor to this is they needed to sort of cleanse themselves a little bit from that purple spectre that was there in the background.
Bill Bridges, yeah.
Sorry?
Bill Bridges.
Bill Bridges, yeah. So they're launching that effort and the charity that they did. What's it called? Agents Together. Great idea. Had it been done by anybody else, they would be lauded and so on. It was met with a bit of skepticism from the industry for obvious reasons, but it had that effect of really reintroducing them and rehabilitating them. And then they've been extremely hands-on in getting the product out there, which is interesting in the way that they've run and conducted those the preview sessions they've been doing for estate agents. But there is a lot of skepticism still. But I think ultimately, they've also been clever in as much as they're putting together now, a board of directors, which members of the public can actually, or founder agents of the site can now vote as to who makes up that board. So what they're doing is really they're saying, look, we are for the people, and we're actually going to stuff our board full of industry yes men that want. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, we're gonna stuff our board full of industry personalities that hopefully give people a lot of comfort. So I think in terms of PR, they're doing as well as they possibly can given their background.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't disagree. The thing is, I can't plot a better cause for them than they have done already. But therein is the thing: is are they fighting against an existing structure, an existing view within the industry towards them that makes this really hard? And genuinely, I can't call it either way. I think it's just going to be fascinating. Ultimately, of course, it has to come down to how the public respond to it in general. So some of the stuff that on the face of it sounds a bit gimmicky and all the rest, the ability to choose a vase and to be to receive a revenue stream from that, the famous monetization of the people who visit, but you never actually get any in an ordinary agency any money from. Can they crack that one? A number of companies have tried and have literally fallen by the wayside without really ever making it. So that is but that could be
I'm not sure, but you know what I'd love to see? I'd love to see all the booming articles and all the sort of on all the boards and all the industry chat groups that are going on talking about Boomin taking down Rightmove, why don't you just concentrate on taking out ZPG or taking out On the Market? Surely it's it's an easier target. You turn around to agents and you say, look, you're always going to spend on Rightmove. We understand. That's just the way things are. Most agents have accepted that. Some very brave agents, including some of our present company, Christian Byfield, they've managed to come off that. But a lot of agents are going to stick with it. Can they then go after the smaller challenger portals and just sweep up all of that spend? Because really that's where it's at.
And I think that differentiation as well, however true it is, being able to just say, we're not just another portal, that needs to be reiterated, doesn't it? Because you don't want to just be seen as a challenger brand until you truly are, in that space. So again, and I think Tom makes a really good point here. So again, he talks about, do you want the key to a new portal would be to target large cities or regions to get the critical mass. And of course, Tom does talk back to the strategy that, of how a number of portals worked in the past, but they would obviously then be strong in particular areas and grow organically like that, and then inevitably the likes of ZPG would kind of acquire them on that basis and just fold their data in there. The problem really with Booming, as far as that track record is, there's none of those realistically those small ones to go after, is there, to artificially buy the data for? I mean, who'd you go after? I mean, in the past, of course, you could go after any number of those, but we're at a mature stage now for the property portal industry, and that's closed to them unless they do some massive deals, and that's not really likely on the cards.
Let's have a look at what our friend Christian's got to say. They could launch where they don't have critical mass with email capture in areas they don't, alerting people when they reach critical mass locally, but also leverage that to onboard agents. We have 10K local registrations. And I wonder, I've still not worked it out, what happens to your registered buyers that you've currently got on your database. Whether or not when you start to integrate with Boomin, will that automatically, because of the extent of the data sharing that is allowed over that network, whether that scoops up all your existing data, or is it only looking at whatever it is that's new from that point on?
I'd have to have a look into it, and I'm no expert on this at all. But I don't know, from a GDPR perspective, would you just be okay to kind of just forward those on? Surely there's got to be something built into the terms of business, hasn't there?
Well, there's an awful lot with Boomin's T's and C's that I believe that they're trying to make GDPR compliant, and the way that it will work in terms of white labeling your services as an estate agent, but also registering those people on Boomin from a very early stage. So when you book, even from the extent that, when you book a market appraisal, traditionally, those market appraisals are out of reach of the portals at that stage, because you're not really sharing that information with them until it comes to the market. Whereas with Boomin, you're sharing that info from day one. From the minute you call my branch to book a valuation, you're then on the system. And the reason they say that has to be that way is that I can then market your property secretly, almost anonymously, and it's all set up and ready to go. All these efficiencies have massive data implications, and I'm not necessarily saying there's anything wrong with it, because 9 out of 10 agents aren't even going to take advantage of that data that they're inputting into their own database. So someone else is going to do it for you.
It's about a reciprocal share, isn't it? We're coming on to a later story as well that talks about that. Tom makes the point there is Fish for Home still available. And by the way, Tom, you're trying to be funny, but again, you've inadvertently made a proper point there. The second part of the model, of course, is that they are giving the portal away free for a time. And there was a portal that really was, I think, probably one of the first, apart from maybe Glowbricks, which failed on the basis that actually it had hit the critical mass thing. It had pretty much, through the advertising, obviously, and everything else, of all the agents' stock, but never managed to transfer itself into a subscribe model. It kept saying, we're going to move to subscribe, and then we'll throw advertising behind it. No one ever saw the value enough in it. So the challenge has got to be, of course, for Booming, which is free for the period of time for next year, is can they genuinely then demonstrate enough value there for when it goes to the next stage, people feel like they can put their hands in their pocket for the designated fees they've already now set out.
Next year has a number of different challenges ahead. So yes, we've had an amazing run of it this year. A lot of people have exceeded some of their targets. But dare we talk about Brexit and the effect that's going to have on the market? So coming out of COVID and then straight into the aftermath of these awful Brexit negotiations, what's going to be left of consumer confidence? I've been reading all the comments this week on various different things, and I admire the jingoistic saber rattling of people like Sean Adams, continually referring to a Franco-German superstate, like we're back in 1942 again.
So read out all those bullet points for the Connells LSL takeover, and that's what Germany and France could do, isn't it? Sort of like,
well, they target our big cities like Tom wants them to, and then they'd crush us. But those, the very serious knock-on effects, really, globally. Yeah. And although it's easy to criticize from our armchairs and to look at, if you've looked at any of the interviews with Boris, it almost seems like he's accepted that he's not going to get the deal that he was after, and the next thing will be, well, prepare for a harsh trading climate.
How to sell it? How he's talking about it as get ready for Australia. It's like, I think lots of people will be thinking, I wish we could plan for Australia, because emigration, if we were actually allowed to get over there, would be at its highest. It's staggering, really, isn't it, that we can get to this stage? And it really, this, regardless of your viewpoint, the idea that this could have been so kicked along the road, literally just waiting for these bloody deadlines. It's like they seemingly do cock all, isn't it? Until you get to within a week of these deadlines, and then it all starts happening again.
I wasn't entirely sure why all these, in a normal, I was trying to sort of liken it to estate agency negotiations.
Yeah.
How many sales would we actually get through if we set a timer on it and said, look, if we don't reach terms by Thursday at 4:00, we're walking away from the table? I don't think we'd sell anything, because you have to be able to get to that point without holding a gun to somebody's head, because then it's not a negotiation, it's a hostage situation, isn't it?
Can I tie Brexit back to the property market in a really
go on.
Well, there was okay. I'm not an avid reader of Ideal Home, but it says that one of the big articles that they've just had is the shocking truth about how long it really takes to sell a house. Be prepared. And it says here, we're optimistic when completing a sale, but in reality, it's much more of a slog than most think. Bear in mind, this is talking to the consumer here. So house prices are soaring right now, and lots of people are moving home. But new research reveals that we're not as savvy as we might think when it comes to the selling process. Yopa, and regardless of whatever your views there is, they surveyed 2,000 Brits and found that 72% of them believe it takes just 3 months or less from the moment a property is put on the market to when the keys are handed over. Furthermore, and again, we always talk about the Trump 33%, or there's always 33% or around that figure, aren't there, that just won't see the wood for the trees. Well, it's good to see that remains consistent. Furthermore, just over a quarter believe the whole process takes a month or less. Now,
okay. Is that down to agents really, really badly managing the public's expectations? So if you take a call here now and they say, let me ask you two things. They're going to ask you how long on average, and they always start the question with the same thing. I know it's a bit of a how long's a piece of string question. However, could you tell me, roughly speaking, how long is it going to take me to sell my house? And all you could do as an agent is say, look, within this environment, if you are priced correctly, we're envisaging that you will find a buyer within X many weeks of marketing your property. And then, madam, you've got to then budget for 3 or 4 months on the other side of that because of chains and solicitors and delays. Now that I'm talking in the best of times. Right now, whilst solicitors are claiming that they cannot hack it anymore, they're turning away customers, they're putting their prices up, they are moaning and complaining.
Try and get your hands on a search in some parts of the country.
Forget it. It's not there. But I'll tell you something, come February and March, these same solicitors that are groaning now, they're going to have to change. They're going to have to go back to being the friends of everybody to try and win that business back. So I don't think these volumes or these timescales are what we can expect for the future. And I'm hoping it will get back to normal. But yeah, you're right. Well, the average member of the public does not understand how long it takes to sell a house.
I'm always fine to have a little pop at my agency brethren and friends, as you know, supplying the supplier side as I do. But I do have to say is the idea that you guys just have to, wave the magic wand in terms of and share any blame for this it's just much more. It's just much more. I was talking to Michael Stoop the other day, obviously blue blood property regalness on the show the other day. We're talking about agents giving and everything else. But we were talking about the foot point where, people talk about that urban myth of everyone, of people moving once every seven years. You've got to stop it. And Michael made the point, back in his day, it was maybe once every 4 years, once every 7 years. The research that showed at the moment that those figures up to once every 17 years. How the fuck do you expect the public to get any knowledge or understanding of that industry when they do this so rarely?
And we've talked this week about. Was it you that I spoke to about, all this video stuff that's going on at the moment? So agents are talking to the camera, but they're talking on Facebook and Instagram and every other bit of social media, and they are trying to educate the public. So they're giving them information about the local marketplace and so on. But how do we as agents, are we really just looking in a mirror, and are we incapable of seeing how it is for the wider public? In actual fact, do most of the wider public give a damn about how long it takes to sell a house until they need to sell a house? Do they really care about the state of their local market until they need to sell their house? So
I think ASAP, the outsourced sales progression guys, were talking about, it's probably got up to 140, 150 days. And this article goes on to say the whole process takes around 130 days in faster moving markets and up to a whopping 200 days in certain areas of the country. That's almost 7 months, they say, helpfully, in reality. That's when it's going to start resonating, isn't it? That's it.
It can take, and you know what? The longer the chain, the more the twists and turns you're going to have to go through. You've got to allow for several people within that chain to lose their buyers at some point, and those agents have to put those sales back together. We've seen that.
The other day, one of the things that I accept that this isn't going to happen in 99% of places, but a chain fell through. I think it was down in Bristol, because the week before they were due to complete, the owners of the house opened up their door one day and found the fresh Banksy on the side of the
yeah.
Now the average house price in that road was something like 200,000 quid. They were saying with that on the side of the house, it could be worth 5 million. Now that's the sort of thing you can log in on Monday and you just look at your sales progression notes. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Well, it's given me an idea. If we can get a couple of Banksy stencils together and some spray paint, we'll just go around. The slow movers on our books. Just
call them mincies.
Mincies. I'm not sure people are ready for my graffiti on their front wall. I just don't know. I'd love to hear from agents like Tom McGee, who says that it's because loads of the public are fake. And please, Tom, stop talking about those people that voted for Brexit. Let's accept the result. It was democratic. It was the will of the people. And you're quite right in what you say. Quite a lot of those people are fake. But
just a bit cold. Well,
Did we have last year? Am I dreaming that last year I had a Kerfuffle branded Santa hat in pink.
Yep.
Do those exist?
They do. The trading standards took them off us because anyone who went near an open flame burst into flames with them. But yes, they are still out there as collector's items. I would point out. Take that, Jerry Lyons, with your new fantastic range of. Have you seen it, by the way? Straight out of comics.
I like that.
Wow, just well done.
I do like what's happening in the content world at the moment. But this is a question for the people in the content world and for agents. How much do the general public care about the content that average agents are putting out there? They spoke about it on the EA podcast this morning, the importance of keeping that going and the fact that you can reach wider audiences. And you most definitely can. I do, and it works for us. But the question is, how much of an active buyer's audience is that? I would argue you have to keep going at it for probably 5 years to get, to be able to see long-term results on that. So it's not an easy win. But I think that we as estate agents in this industry, we assume that moving house and house buying and house selling and values and all that sort of stuff is of far more interest to the public than it actually is on average.
Can I suggest, though, as well, going back to those stats as well before, that they just start to highlight why we might have a bit more of a challenge in our country structurally for prospecting? Because if in Australia those stats for moving are once every 5 years, of course you can make the case very easily via numbers as to why you should make in those phone calls. If on the other hand it is starting to approach once in every 20 years, that's a hell of a commitment, isn't it? You're starting off as a negotiator. I've got to do this for 17 years.
There are cold calls, and then there's that call. Look what Tom McGee said. I think it's a really interesting point. Yes, because I spoke to Tom this week about the value of our show, and he says we do add value. People who are regarded as having great content with all the interaction on the post being from other agents. Stop talking about my post like that, Tom McGee. Put a lot of effort into those. Sean, good morning. I think I pronounced that correctly.
You did. You struggle with it as well, but you did well.
Sean. Content is great. Sorry?
Don't do accents.
That was my pirate accent. Sean. Content is great if it answers a question or pain point rather than self-congratulates the agents and how good they are. She's 100% right. 100% right.
Yeah, good. That's really, that's spot on there. I wanted to just ask you a question as well, and if anyone else was there, did you see the? I know we spoke about it offline, but they were talking about obviously the highest numbers or highest demand for agents in a decade. Obviously, the property market and Arla analysis of data. It said over the course of 2020, there were typically 403 buyers registered per branch. This means this year saw the highest demand in a decade, as the number of registered buyers per branch was higher than the previous peak of 379 in 2015, 5 years ago, obviously, as well as 55% higher than the 260 average in 2010. Do those figures resonate with you? Do they sound right? Do you not have a CRM system that can tell you that information?
I have a CRM system that you sold me, sir. And only some of it works and has ever worked, but a lot of it's in production, which is great. No, I think, those numbers are up for sure. Yeah. But it's how transient those numbers are. So was it just a post-pandemic, let's get out there, see what's there, and let's move? Have we seen all those moves? I would argue that we've probably worked our way through it, and that a lot of that data is going to get archived soon, because I'm not quite sure that they're all buyers and that they're all serious about moving. Once they get back to their offices, once the vaccine that you and I endorse entirely, don't we, Simon?
Yep. Yeah. No. I am pro-vaccine. Especially
everyone should get at least 2.
Especially the Kerfuffle vaccine that I've got in this little bag coming soon this week. Half price, 50% discount on the Russian one. So come to us first when you do it.
But when the vaccine rolls out, and if life begins to return to normal, and All of those people are kicking their partners out of the small room because they can finally go back to the office or to their workplace. Will we really feel the squeeze at home as much as we did for that short period of time? Because we all took the assumption that this war is going to last forever and that we're all going to be working at home forever. But what we've also understood is that as nice as this virtual working is, you are missing, and it's a train for estate agents, because they've managed to go back to the office for a long time now. They've not really felt this, but I overheard a conversation yesterday between an accountant and a solicitor, and that was really interesting anyway. But one of the things that they spoke about was the fact that they're training people virtually online. And for trainees, they're not getting the benefit of listening to other colleagues on the phone, having that patter.
That osmosis of learning from people in the office.
Correct. And just being around David Mintz, you absorb some of his greatness. A little bit of it is going to come on you. A little bit. I'm not sure those were the right words, but you know what I'm trying to get across.
I do. And you know what? One of the things that was pointed out to me was that actually, I think, let's just say more mature people they have loved this. They have become, once they've got past the loose women stage of watching TV, they've become more productive. But do you know what? You have to get to that stage of having the experience, and what the youth coming through, whether that's apprentices or new starters, they are completely robbed of that invaluable early learning stage, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think we will get back to it, and I think this whole homeworking thing, as fun as it's been, for some people they do it really, really well. Some people they're so far out of their comfort zone that they need to be back in the office. It's very good for them over there. They cannot motivate themselves, by setting their own targets at home and all that sort of stuff. So I think that our houses will get bigger.
All it's done is accelerate change, hasn't it? I think it has been a driver for that change. So I think the people that were going to do that were going to be the case. I think they're going to have to finally come up with a solution for, what's happening on the high street, because, whatever we're left coming back to there is going to be a big change. I mean, obviously from my own personal horrific point of view, the amount of pubs and bars and restaurants, hospitality has been decimated. So how does that respond back? Of course, I mean, one beneficial thing should be at least we get served at tables these days. But I appreciate that's probably not enough to swap on the one hand the pandemic, is it? But you're right. I mean, I saw the other day Zoom had last December 10 million subscribers. Obviously, when it hit May, June or something like that, it had 300 million. Those are the kind of Facebook-style acquisition things, aren't they? But and you can go back if you're a real glutton for punishment. Go back over some of our podcasts. I do make the point that when we're let out of this, do you think anyone wants to see a fucking Zoom call again for a while?
No, I don't think so.
Touch people, aren't you? And I mean touch people again in the right possible sense.
When our right move rep says it's time for a meeting, and I always used to go, oh no, not another one. But genuinely now I'd be like, he's coming over. Move on him.
Yeah, 20%, not a problem.
Anyway, I've got to push on because I've got to go and serve fine members of the general public who are not as stupid as he makes them out to be.
You do that wonderful thing that you do, my friend, and to everybody else. Are we having a Christmas show? I want to do the Queen Speaks on Christmas Day, and because I'm assuming because of your religious persuasion, that shouldn't be a problem. We can do that, can't we?
You make a lot of assumptions, but you're 100% right. I'm not doing anything remotely religious on Christmas Day. And this week is indeed the Festival of Lights. If you're Jewish, it's Happy Hanukkah to all of you. We will see you for the Christmas episode next week. Love you lots. Have a great week, everybody.
Have a great one. Ta-ra, everybody. Stay safe.